By their nature, incidents are rare. They're interesting to us because they are a violation of our expectation. We could learn from everyday work just as much as we can learn from incidents. In fact, we can learn far more, says Dr. Stephen Shorrock. Context edition of CSO Talk. Did you ever ask yourself why things often just do not work out as they were designed to? Sometimes really simple things? Today I will talk about some fascinating aspects of everyday work with Dr. Stephen Shorrock, who is one of the most knowledgeable scientists when it comes to the topic of human work. For me, understanding human work becomes ever more important because of digitalization, because of just culture, and especially during such times of crisis as we see today. The variability of human performance is both normal and necessary. Without performance variability, nobody of us could actually perform. And inspired by Stephen at the Eurocontrol Safety Forum in 2018, my line delegate team and I decided to carry out a study on performance variability in skyguide. And this study was then realized in 2019 and completed this year. I would specifically like to thank all our ARTCOs who actively participated in the study. Their very open and honest inputs were significant. If you want to learn more about our study, there will be a comprehensive article in the next HindSight Magazine. And of course, my team is available to answer any question you might have. Just drop me an email or use the comment field on YouTube below. For all those who are watching from skyguide, you find a description about the study and also a link to the summary report in the notes below. But please, treat the report and all its content as an internal report. And now, let me briefly introduce Dr. Shorrock. Stephen holds a PhD in human error in air traffic control. He is both a chartered psychologist and ergonomist. As a human factor specialist, Steve has experience in aviation, rail, onshore process industries, healthcare and government administration. He works at Eurocontrol, where he is responsible for the safety culture program, and he is the editor-in-chief of HindSight Magazine. Hello Steve, good to see you and welcome to CSO Talk.
Hello Klaus, with pleasure, and thank you for the invitation. It's an honor to spend some time with you in this conversation with skyguide.
Stephen, from your vast experience in all those various sectors, what is it that makes performance variability so important?
Well, I suppose, performance variability is a broad concept. It refers first of all to a capacity, a requirement within us as individuals, as groups, and also as organizations to be able to constantly adjust and adapt to situations as we find them, because the demands upon us, again, as individuals, teams, and organizations, they vary over time, and so we have to be prepared to respond to those demands, knowing that the resources that we have and the constraints upon us also vary over time. Staffing, equipment, competencies, and so on, they also change over time, and they're not always as we necessarily imagine. And so we have to be able to adjust. The second thing, I suppose, is that our performance will always vary over time, and that's just natural, again, whether it's an individual or a whole organization. And if you think about it, even your own performance and my performance and anybody listening, their own performance, it will always be below its average on any measure for 50% of the time, when you think about it. And on any measure, it will always be above average 50% of the time. And so there's natural variation in performance. And so in another sense, that means that sometimes performance will go outside of established rules and procedures and guidelines and so on, because they cannot always imagine within these published rules the kinds of situations that we will encounter.
Okay, Steve, do you see an issue with the ever-increasing compliance requirements in our already quite heavily regulated environment? I mean, why do we apparently not manage to develop rules which then can simply be followed?
Well, those who are tasked with writing rules, procedures, regulations, and so on have a difficult job because they have to project their imagination, their work as imagined, into the future and into other contexts in which they do not work, to imagine how work should be done in order to produce what I would call work as prescribed. Now, when it comes to people in any situation, whether you are an air traffic controller, an engineer, a safety specialist, the CSO or the CEO, then you are not always able to follow every single rule to the letter all the time, and that's just natural within life. So that creates a kind of tension between this desire to nail down all of the details and give us certainty over how things will be done, which is the work as prescribed, versus the reality of work as done, which is that we have to adjust and adapt all the time. And we have to reconcile these different and sometimes conflicting goals that we have between safety, security, between capacity, cost effectiveness, environment, and so on. And so as these goals are changing all of the time, as the environment and context is changing all of the time, we have to be able to work, and sometimes the rules and procedures, the work as prescribed that we have, cannot imagine all of those situations that we find ourselves in.
Thank you, Steve, for this excellent explanation. So if we wanted to see work as done, always as we imagined, we really would need a crystal ball when prescribing it. The next issue of HindSight is dedicated to everyday work. Can you tell us a bit more about this? I mean, why have you chosen this theme?
Well, the next issue of HindSight Magazine is indeed on learning from everyday work, learning from ordinary work. The reason for this is that what we tend to do in safety when we think about learning is we think that we should be learning mostly, and this is what we do, we try to learn from unwanted events, from incidents and so on. But by their nature, incidents are rare. They're interesting to us because they are a violation of our expectation, and so at some level they show the world is not as we imagine it was, or not as we imagined it should be or would have been. But in fact what we find is that the conditions and the work as done in the context of an unwanted event such as an incident is really very similar to when we have everyday work. And so we can learn from everyday work just as much as we can learn from incidents. In fact, we can learn far more, but we don't tend to pay as much attention to it because we think it's ordinary, it's everyday, it's routine and unremarkable. But in fact, if we pay attention to it, we can learn without having to suffer from incidents and or perhaps even worse.
Very good, thank you. So what can the reader expect from the new edition, and when will it be published?
Well, the next issue of HindSight is on this topic of learning from everyday work, and what you will find in there is the usual. We'll have articles from professors such as Eric Hollnagel and Richard Cook. There'll be an editorial from myself as usual. And then there'll be articles on learning from everyday work, be it observation or reflection or conversations, for instance, from people working in air traffic management, from people working more in the flight deck or with pilots. And as usual, as per the last few issues, we've got some articles from people outside of our industry, such as firefighting. So I have an interview with one of the UK's most senior female firefighters, for instance. We have insights from elite sport, elite athletes, insights from healthcare, including, for instance, learning from excellence rather than just learning from unwanted events. And we'll have a special section also on COVID. So this will be a special supplement, actually, a separate supplement that will be looking at what we've learned from COVID so far in terms of the aviation industry.
Stephen, thank you very much again for the interview, and I am sure that many safety professionals and frontline operators will greatly benefit from the new magazine. And let me congratulate you for the excellent work you are doing as editor-in-chief of HindSight. This magazine is a true value add to all safety critical industries and sectors. So stay healthy and talk to you soon again. Bye, Steve.
Well, it's been my pleasure, Klaus, and I hope that what I've had to say will be interesting, but certainly more interesting will be what people have to read in the next issue of HindSight by a wide variety of authors offering their learnings and their reflections. So thank you so much.
Steve is currently supporting us as well with some cultural elements of our transformation in the frame of Virtual Center. And we will have the opportunity to cover this important topic in one of the future editions of CSO Talk. So much for today. I hope this was interesting for you. And of course, we will let you know as soon as the magazine is out. The next CSO Talk will focus on safety culture principles and the importance of how to deal with safety data and safety information, and how not to. So stay tuned, stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for watching and